believe in the ripple effect.
What's up? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Rika the Vrendis, also known as Ricky Vrendis, and a great episode for you today. Today we have guest Tony Arterburn, who is a former U.S. Army paratrooper, owner of Wise Wolf Gold, host of the Arterburn radio transmission, host of the Wise Wolf Gold and Crypto Show, and co-host of American Unplugged. As usual, all these links will be in the show description. And also, if you want to support the show, you'll be able to find all my sponsor links, all the ways of sending a donation, and much more in the show description. Or you can go directly to our website, therippleeffectpodcast.com or rickyverandis.com. And you can also find all the links there. You can find all the ways to watch the show, listen to the show. You can also get merch, or go to the Ripple Effect Podcast merch.com to get some merch, or rate, review, tell people about the show, post the show, share the show. All those things help fighting against the algorithms that suppress conversations like these. But regardless how you help, if you get some value out of the Ripple Effect Podcast, consider giving some value back. I've had some new Patreon signups for $1 a month, and that's all I ask. If a small percentage of the people who listen and watch the Ripple Effect Podcast donated as little as $1 a month on Patreon, I could easily do the show full time. So please contribute anything you can. I mean, $1 a month is less than a cup of coffee. You won't even know it's gone, and you can help with the goal of eventually doing the show full time. So that's it, guys. I'll keep this intro short. Enjoy this amazing conversation about the Ponzi scheme we call the financial system and many more related topics, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.
I'm from a town outside of Dallas, Texas called Rockwall. It's actually the same hometown as Alex Jones. He's a little bit older than me, I think about 5 years or so, but we went to the same schools, had some of the same teachers, I'm sure. And in my environment was helping my dad, kind of like my son's doing now, but I was much younger, helping my dad and my grandfather build convenience stores, and they had a fuel business. And my dad had really just come from a very humble beginnings and built himself up, chartered a bank when he was in his 20s. So I got to see that. This is the late 80s in North Texas. I got to see not only the end of Texas banking, which is a whole other story, but used to, in Texas, there weren't such things as Wells Fargo or Chase Bank or any of the majors. Like, they didn't have Bank of America. You couldn't have a charter there because the Texas Constitution required you to have, individual state charters, and you had to have a president at each bank. Well, my dad did that. And it was interesting to watch them break up that system. And I got to learn a little bit about how the government works, like early on, and learned a lot from my dad. And so in the 90s, just growing up and looking at what happened in places like Waco and Ruby Ridge, and there was just a lot of people waking up in that time. I remember, just loving my country, wanted to serve, I wanted to do stuff like that, but also very skeptical of the power structure. And I carried that with me when I joined the military in '99, and just out of high school, I'd been a competitive power lifter. I competed on the state and national level. I was a state champion in Texas and national champion. And then I won a world title. I was set a world record when I was 19 on bench press. And as I was a lifetime drug-free athlete, just a crazy kid. I was very disciplined. It was hard to figure me out. I mean, that kind of personality that's obsessive like that when you're young is pretty rare. I was very disciplined. I had a bit of a subculture, among my friends when I was coming up and going in through high school. But joined the military. This is right prior to 9/11. I volunteered to go to Mr. Clinton's war in Serbia, the Kosovo campaign. We bombed Serbia for 78 days. I was part of the second rotation of troops there. I was a U.S. Army paratrooper and military policeman. So I got to do three foreign wars, Ricky. I got to do Afghanistan. We were part of the first Army unit on the ground in Kandahar, Afghanistan, following 9/11. So I got to see a lot of stuff happening in real time. Things that, 3, 4, 5, 10 years later, it's all forgotten. How things actually were when you're first in. Like the officer who greeted and briefed us when we landed in Kandahar was General Mattis, Mad Dog Mattis, who eventually became Secretary of Defense for Trump. So that was who was briefing me, just standing like in this room, like just telling me what to expect and what I'm looking at. And so you get some history, some hardcore history up front, and living that. And I was part of the invasion, tail end of the invasion of Iraq too. So all that to say, if you listen to my shows, I've been radio for 11 years now, but if you listen to my shows or reading in my writing or, see me on other shows, you know that I'm skeptical of foreign wars. I'm very anti-war. And, just like Smedley Butler, who wrote War is a Racket, and pretty much that. I mean, I love the warrior class. I love the mentality of that. And I think you should prepare for war. That's what George Washington said. You want to secure peace, you prepare for war. But I think it should be used as a last resort. It shouldn't be a first operating system for multinational corporations and, banking conglomerates. And this is what we have now, which is the world's upside down, which led me after the military to get into different business ventures. I had, small fast food stuff I tried. I did retail real estate. I did, all kinds of different things and failed at some things. I did some good things when in my 20s. I did some really stupid things too. And it wasn't until I started my company, Wise Wolf, which is gold and silver and, of course, collectible coins and crypto. I was part of the first Bitcoin ATMs in the United States. I mean, I was buying Bitcoin. It was $350 a coin. I wish I'd have kept all of them. I was putting them through my ATMs, but just learned a lot about currency and about value and history. So it's really my wheelhouse. And when you combine that with doing media like I do now and getting to talk to so many interesting people like yourself and have open conversations, just making that journey when I ran for office, going into media has been a great decision because I get to have a larger conversation than I would if I just had physical gold and silver locations and talk to the people in that area. So it's been a real blessing. I love what I do, especially in these times, because we're on the precipice of massive change. I mean, it's why I kind of accelerated my media appearances, because I wanted people to know what I'm looking at. It's not really an alarmist thing. It's more of an alarm bell in the night, because I think we all have, and I have it too. We have normalcy bias. We get used to something. It's just a human condition. And you feel like tomorrow is going to be like today because it was like yesterday. Well, that's not how history, bodes well for people with that mentality. You have to be really skeptical of yourself with normalcy bias. So I've been watching, where the price of gold has gone and where the price of Bitcoin's going. But it's not just about price. There's literally a reset, because by the way, I don't know where I get this term. They tell you what it is. They tell you it's a great reset. There is a reset, and there will be a revaluation of all commodities. And I think we've had an experiment, Ricky. I think what we've had is an experiment since 1971 with modern fiat currency, and fiat means by decree. It's just backed by nothing. Nixon took us off the gold standard August 15th, 1971. And at that time, the gold was $35 an ounce. It had been that since 33, since Franklin Roosevelt. But the world knew that something was wrong, so they started cashing in their dollars for gold at the gold window. Nixon shut it down. But since that time, it's just exploded. And, gold has gone up 2,000% in the 70s. But the thing is, gold hasn't really gone up, folks. The gold hasn't really gone up in the last 100 years. What you're watching is the debasement of currency. And while you're trying to go out and accumulate these things called dollars as fast as you can, they're losing purchasing power, they're losing value, and the elites want you to do that because they're basically living tax free, using debt, buying assets. They need you turning the machine. They need you giving it energy, and of course that's how money velocity works. And I can get it's stuff way beyond my pay grade. Really, I don't even pretend to know how all of it works. I just know you don't have to really understand the mechanisms. Just know that it's criminality at the highest order. Highest order. It's criminality across the board. They have a printing press, and they're going to continue to use the printing press to fund things like endless war and the welfare state and the deep state. But all countries do this. I mean, this is why they hijack the currency and then they use it for their own ends. And we're just in a kind of a post-profit world for companies now. I mean, like you can see what happened to, Anheuser-Busch and Bud Light and all the stuff they did. You hear go woke, go broke, but that's not really how things work. I mean, they don't really go broke because of their relationship with the central bank. So I'm on a mission to talk about what's real, what's fake, and how I'm seeing our current reality when it comes to the prism of commodities, gold, silver, Bitcoin, and how this is going to change our world.
So a lot of us in the alternative media community say things like, oh, money used to be backed by gold. And we say things like banks print money out of thin air. For people who maybe hear those terms said often, but don't really understand the history of it and what we mean by, could you expand?
Well, yeah, that's the weird rabbit hole. There's a point in history, we just kind of crossed the Rubicon some time ago where you used to have what was called fractional reserve banking. So let's say a bank had, so many dollars in holdings so that they could basically loan, not, 10 times what they had. So if they had, 100,000 in reserves, they can loan 1 million, something like that. They had to have some kind of reserve to create new notes. And that, they figured this out. The Rothschilds were the masters of this back in the late 18th century. And of course, modern banking was based on fractional reserve. So pretty much everybody did it. And, we had paper notes in this country a couple of times. If you go back to the Constitution of the United States, it says that only Congress can coin money and it has to be gold or silver. That really, got left behind in 1913 when we created the third bank of the United States, which was the Federal Reserve System. And of course, it's not federal and it's not a reserve. But they hijacked the money supply, which is really what they wanted all along. Because even if the government can write checks against so many reserves, it has to be accountable somewhere. Like there has to be an accounting, there has to be, they can't overdraft too often. There has to be some sort of accountability. So really what the goal is to hijack the money supply and do this magic trick where if you go back to the old notes, like if you took out a $20 bill, and I brought it up on the show before, I had one come through the shop the other day, and it was dated 1950. It's a $20 bill. It looks real similar to what we have today, except if you look at the top, there's a little paragraph, and it says, this note is redeemable in lawful money. So it wasn't saying that it was money. It's saying this note is redeemable in lawful money, and lawful money, of course, was gold. Now, you couldn't own gold legally in 1950, but that was for the rest of the world because we were the world's reserve currency. So what's really happened is like if you get a $20 gold piece, and then if any of your listeners can, you can go look this up. They have a couple of different types. There's one called a St. Gaudens. There's another one called a double-headed Eagles of Liberty. You can look at these it's $20. And that's what $20 was from the founding of the United States to 1933. There was no inflation. I mean, if you were to buy a pair of clothes, a set of suit to go to George Washington's inaugural, that suit would cost the same in 1902 because we didn't have inflation. We had a bimetallic standard. There was some ups and downs, had the Civil War in between. There was some issues, but we didn't have inflation across the board. We had deflation for the most part. So what's happened is this they flipped the script. And so while you're holding these notes and thinking that you got something real, they take the gold, right? This is what Franklin Roosevelt did in 1933. They take the gold. They gave it to the Bank of International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, by the way, if you want to know where the gold went. Those people who didn't turn their gold in, which applaud to them because I still get a lot of those $20 gold pieces that come into the shop. So not everybody turned in their gold. So that's a kind of a long way to say the $20 gold piece, the gold in that is it buys about the same as I was saying earlier. If you look at, an ounce of gold, which is pretty much what an ounce of gold is in a $20 gold piece. So that buys the same amount of land, oil, food, housing, about the same. Okay. And it actually does have a little bit more purchasing power, but that's about it. I mean, gold buys about the same. Whereas the $20, what happened to it? Well, it's debased beyond belief. I mean, they've just continued to debase the dollar. And the reason it's debased is because they just create new currency units. So you make these more ubiquitous. Whenever you create more of something anyway, it's kind of like if you've ever heard the historical analogy of what happened to the Dutch with tulip mania, where tulips were very rare. So they would use them as an exchange and kind of a commodity. And then somebody figured out, well, I can just grow tulips this way and mass produce them. And then it just drops to zero. Nobody wants them. That's a kind of a short microcosm of what happens to fiat currency. And the average lifespan of a fiat currency is 26 years. So we're double that. And by the way, when I say the lifespan, I mean like life and death. So like throughout history, the average lifespan of a fiat currency, which is backed by nothing, is 26 years. We're double that in large part because we were in our starting, we still are, but it's declining rapidly with the world's reserve currency. As a matter of fact, if your listeners probably know, if they're paying attention to this, that we just lost the petrodollar. I mean, that should be earth-shattering news. It somehow isn't. But Saudi Arabia had to deal with us for the last 50 years to only be able to purchase crude oil through the dollar system and using dollars. So that's gone away. So what's happening is we're starting to see the money velocity slow down for the dollar. Purchasing power is weakening. Usage around the world is weakening. And our government is out of control. And what took us 200 years to go $1 trillion in debt, took us 200 years to do that the first time we hit 1 trillion. Now we're 35 trillion, I believe, in debt, and we add $1 trillion every 100 days to the national debt balance. So there's a lot of things that are wrong with our currency, and that's what, in a nutshell, the difference between like money and currency is that money inherently has a value. Like gold has an inherent store of value in it. It's hard to get. It's rare. It has properties that are used in not only medicine and science and other things, but used in is jewelry. I mean, gold's used everywhere. It's used in electronics. So it has an inherent value. Same thing with silver. It's rare. It's hard to get out of the ground. You have to refine it. So there's money. That's money. And currency and money can be the same thing. You can have circulating money, but right now we just have currency. So it's like a current, an electric current. If it stops, it dies. So that's where we are. We've decoupled value from the currency, and we're printing them. Let me rephrase. I always say that. Even me, I always make that mistake where I'm talking about printing. There's not enough paper. And I'll give you an example. Like if you were to print 1 trillion $1 bills and you just printed them and stacked them, end to end, they would reach the sun. That would go 93 million miles. So we don't have enough paper on planet Earth to make those notes, but they put keys, they key in numbers up on the screen, and that's where you get those numbers.
So the petrodollar, I know that, like you said, that recently they've gotten rid of it. How did the U.S. let that happen? Because that was one of the ways that it kept the value of.
Yes, that's the question I've been asking. There's something wrong. It's almost, you could call it a controlled demolition. Are they doing this on purpose? Are they setting the charges and then just watching this thing implode? Because we didn't do anything to stop that. So why wouldn't we? I mean, one of the things that Ronald Reagan had in the 1980s to end the Cold War, if you look at that narrative, was he used the Saudis and pumped a lot of crude onto the market. We weaponized the Saudis. This is one of the reasons they gave for us going into Desert Storm, and then having Desert Shield and having Desert Storm was protecting the House of Saud and all the rest of that, and liberating Kuwait and all that, right? So what is it? Why did we do that? That was supposed to be the petrodollar. That is a wonderful question, because you start to wonder, like, why don't the elites, why don't the people that are so-called leaders, why aren't they brokering deals to strengthen the United States? Well, I think for the past many years, they've just been setting us up for failure. As a matter of fact, Biden's lead economic advisor, Bernstein, he's written in the New York Times that we should lose the world's reserve currency status altogether. And I mean, these people are nuts. You know what it's going to hurt the United States very badly. A lot of people who aren't, especially on a fixed income, and I mean, just across the board, it's just going to be a disaster for those who think that, the road goes on forever with this stuff. It doesn't. Our currency status is changing rapidly, and we have this. You can look at the stats in real time. So it is. Yeah, that's a great question. Why they allow that to happen? They didn't do anything. They literally just let it lapse. So you have to think that the globalists, or whatever you want to call them, the lackeys for the World Economic Forum, or just, you go many decades, Rick, you go back, this. I mean, these guys that run this country, the elite, they don't care about us. They don't care about sovereignty. I always quote Strobe Talbot, who was Secretary of State for Bill Clinton back in the 90s. He said the nation state is irrelevant. Well, you're the Secretary of State, and you just said that. So I think the elites, they look at resetting the grand chessboard, and of course what they want is a one world government. This is Council on Foreign Relations and Trilateral Commission 101. So I don't see it getting like. No one's coming to save the dollar. I think the Federal Reserve is interesting, and there might be different factions. They've raised interest rates, and I'll explain this as briefly as I can. They've raised interest rates faster than any time in history. And what happens, folks, is when you raise interest rates, you contract the money supply and you strengthen that currency because there's less lending going on, there's less currency creation, okay? That's why when you hear them talk about cutting rates, everybody gets really excited because there's about to be a whole bunch of cash flow into the system. And they learned this, and really, I mean, this is an experiment, folks. We went off the gold standard in 71. Gold was $35 an ounce. By the end of the 1970s, it's close to $800 an ounce. But gold didn't really go up. It's the loss of purchasing power in the dollar, and that's why you had stagflation in the 70s, which was inflation, high unemployment, and low economic growth. So they came in and said, we got this inflation problem. So at the head of the Federal Reserve in the 70s was named Paul Volcker. He came in and raised interest rates to the teens. You understand? So getting a mortgage was like 13%, 14%. Like that was just a standard rate because, my dad built homes at the time. So I get to hear about all this stuff. So I was born at the end of 79. So again, it's crazy that we step back and we look, now that with the amount of times they've raised rates, they've kept them fairly low. They're not in the teens or anything, but the reason they've raised them so quickly is because they were trying to curtail hyperinflation, I believe. It's not so much, they really can't target inflation because they'd have to raise rates above it. They'd have to be like 8, 9% to stop inflation at this time. So they can't really do that, but they need to stave off hyperinflation. So they're playing a multi-pronged game, and the markets are just waiting to see what the Federal Reserve does. But meanwhile, the rest of the world is like BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. That's 40% of the world's population right there. They have like a third of the GDP. They just added Saudi Arabia. There's massive change going on, and our media and the mainstream and even mainstream politics, they're not talking about this yet. It's probably not going to be this cycle, but if there isn't, hopefully there's another presidential election someday in 2028. That'll be everything, because by that time, crossing over from 2025, we're going to start seeing they're just going to start plugging in the new system. it's more decentralized, and these other countries are going to be it's a new economic world order, folks. That's what it is. Joe Biden says there's going to be a new world order out there. Yeah, there's going to be a new one. And about every 80 to 100 years, we get one. You can call it a fourth turning, or it's cyclical history. So we're 80 years past the Bretton Woods Agreement that they had at the end of World War II in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. And that's where you get the IMF and the World Bank and gold at $35 an ounce, and the dollar is the world's reserve currency. So it's a long way to kind of explain that, but we are in an unprecedented time of change. The institutions are going to go through a massive change.
Do you have a theory on, I mean, I guess you kind of scraped the surface of it, this idea of like just having, maybe they are just in the process of a demolition, but what's your theory? Do you think the end game is universal basic income, and how do they implement that? Because doesn't the dollar still need to have some value in that case? Like what's the end game in regards to like letting the value of the dollar just completely, just go?
Well, that's a good question too. It has to retain, and I always say the dollar's not going to zero, it's going to digital. So whatever value is retained there. See, with its central bank digital currency, they have the technology to expand and contract the money supply in real time. They'll be able to make your holdings disappear or expire, or they can deny the ability to transact at a certain place. So it really is ultimate control. I mean, and I think those at the very, very top will be scrambling to get as many assets as possible, whether that's real property, whether that's commodity-based things like gold, silver, copper. I mean, other things. I think that's what they'll be. Farmland. You see Bill Gates buying that up, and again, that's what they'll be running towards, because they're just going to completely upend and create a new economic world order. As I've said earlier, that's what all signs point to. That it's like there's a power shift away from the United States and the economic hegemony that it's had since the end of World War II. You can just see it kind of sliding away. Now, whether or not that's going to go without a fight, because there might be. This is multifaceted. The Pentagon had a simulation a few years ago that I covered on my show, where they were going to run a war simulation against a Gen Z Bitcoin revolt, where the Gen Zers went just into Bitcoin, right, and stayed outside of the dollar system. So even the Pentagon knows that the lifeblood of what they do is the fiat currency, petrodollar, and all that stuff. So they must be looking at this a lot like I do. Like, I can't believe we just lost this. So look, there's probably some infighting going on. I don't know how. They're not going to be able to implement central bank digital currency the way I think they want to implement it without a crisis. You will need a problem reaction solution, Hegelian dialectic type thing to get this implemented, in my opinion, because already, 2 years ago, Ricky, I was talking to people, and go to give a talk like at the conservative, dinner or something like that, the Republican Party. And I'm not a Republican or anything. I get asked to speak sometimes with friends I still have in North Texas from when I ran for office. And I just speak a little bit. I'd say, anybody know what a CBDC is? Nobody. But if I asked that today, it would be, oh, yeah, we've heard about that. And so that's good. There is as slow as we don't like, I wish it was faster, but as slow as it has been, it is catching on. Who wants this? They tried this in Nigeria, which is some of the coolest. I love Nigeria they love Bitcoin. They've been great with it. And the banksters said, well, let's do a proving testing ground here with central bank digital currency. They already use Bitcoin, so they must love this. And it just flopped. Nobody wanted it. Nobody wants trackable, traceable fiat currency from a government. I mean, the reason you like Bitcoin is decentralized. It's your wallet, your keys. It can't disappear. All that stuff that these central bank digital currencies can do. And they're not, I mean, you can track it. It's all on a blockchain and there's a ledger there, but it's yours. It's yours on the ledger. And that's the difference, I think. What they will do is unknown. I do know that they have all the plans are there. And this is like, I think the World Economic Forum was bragging the other day. It was like 92% of all major countries have a plan for central bank digital currency, and they just love that. The World Economic Forum was loving that news. Of course they do, because they want to create a one world currency, which is going to be something like the central bank of central banks is the Bank of International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, as I mentioned earlier, where all the gold went in 33. But you also have the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. They've got the Unicoin. These are the signposts on the road to warn all of us. But the good news is that people, I think the trend of history, not only the human beings, but just in our country and other places, my son asked me the other day, it's like, what's the deal with Bitcoin, and what if the government can destroy it? Or, I said, even if that was, I don't think that's possible, but like I said, even if it was, the cool thing is what Bitcoin has done, because it's not, there's gold bugs and silver bugs like me that we've always been around. And I've been a Bitcoin guy since 2016. But what it does is it creates a new conversation. So if you got a young person that gets into Bitcoin, or even somebody that's older and they gets into it and they start looking at why it was created, they look at the origin story, they look at the time frame, that after the '08 crisis, and why was it put into place? We don't know all the ins and outs. We don't know who Satoshi Nakamoto was. Why it's an open question, but it starts the conversation going. And once you learn about fiat currency and what it is and the evil, it's just pure evil. I mean, this is a functionality of deep state degenerates that create what we have now. Like, we're supposed to be in a completely different century, Ricky. We're supposed to have great inventions. We're supposed to have, we're supposed to have pushed humanity a lot farther down the road, but instead we don't have those things. You look at our country, it's falling apart here in the United States. We have broken infrastructure, everything, like you said, at the border, everybody just stands there. Nobody knows what to do. That's because we've awarded all of these people that should not be in power with fake money. We shower corporations who do the wrong thing with fake money. So, I looked the other day, the F-35, a plane, it costs more than $1 trillion. I thought I misspoke because I was going off memory. I was on the David Knight show, and I looked it up in real time while I was on his show, because I thought, did I just say that right? That the F-35 costs $1.3 trillion. It's a plane just to produce it. I mean, just to make it, right? Not all the ones that are like that is, that kind of stuff. Like, we just wasted so much in this country over the past 50 years. It's mind-boggling. So, really, to answer you, I got so far back off from the question, but it all does. I will circle it back. It does all flow together, and the flow is that really at the origin story of all this is just control, and they're willing to lose a little bit. They're willing to let you lose a little bit. But you'll never look at fiat currency the same once you've learned some of these principles, and once you understand, how the game is rigged against you. And that's the important part. So I'm optimistic. If people start acting, in ways to be outside of the system, to understand about decentralizing, like, hey, if you got a Bitcoin wallet, it's your wallet, you got all the phrases, and you've got that protected, that's yours. If you got gold and silver in your hand, no counterparty risk, that is yours. And that value is universal worldwide. And from Boston to Bangladesh, the price of gold is the price of gold for the most part.
Well, the problem with, once we build these industries, these military industries, these corporations that make tons of money, they want to continue making money. So that means that they will pay for lobbyists. They will be pro-war, because pro-war means they're going to keep building tanks and guns and jets and whatnot. And then it's kind of nonstop. You can't stop it. And it's no different than, like, in the health world, the cancer industry, right? I mean, it's like, if we publicly said, hey, this one pill or this plant or whatever it may be cures everybody of cancer, and you just do this if you have any type of cancer, tons of people will be out of work. So there's a motive for people to kind of continue, not looking for solutions. And, sometimes you hear stories about politicians, and I want to actually ask you about your experience running and maybe how it changed the way you look at politics. But you hear these stories about politicians like, hey, I'm kind of anti-war, but I gotta be pro this war because in my district we build tanks or we build whatever. So you've created a industry that has to keep on going regardless, and that's a huge issue. And you talked about the system being rigged. It's so true. My parents are old school farmers. I was born in northern Portugal. My parents still raise chickens and goats and grow everything. And they're not stock market savvy or investment savvy. The only place they can really invest where they can make a little bit of money is like property, right? They have like a little duplex and like stuff like that, because in the stock market, it is rigged. Like it's not for people like my parents who are blue collared, farmers who, try to save a couple bucks. Like you can't make money on the stock market with, the little bit of money that they have. It's a rigged game for people who invest tons of money and know how to take advantage of the rigged game. And and that's the problem. Like everything's kind of rigged. The wars we go into, everything's a rigged game. It's Ukraine is a money laundering scheme. We're just giving money to Ukraine. They're buying stuff from our military and going in the pockets of the military industrial complex. There's a great, and I know you as a veteran, I don't know if you watched the documentary, it was years ago, it was a good one called Iraq for Sale. And they talk about KBR, and all the contractors that were just making ridiculous amounts of money. And I forget which branch of the military was talking about the contractor that was doing the laundry. Like they're like, no, we can do it. Like we'll do it ourselves. They're telling the higher ups, and they're like, no, you can't, because in our contract, like we have to let them do it. And they were getting charged ridiculous amounts, and a lot of times the laundry wasn't being done. And I also remember there was one time, just by accident, I ran into an episode of I think it was called Money and Greed or something. I don't know, one of those shows. And it was a story of these siblings that started a company that was sending things to Iraq or overseas for the military, the government, and then eventually, maybe it was called American Greed. Maybe that's what it was called. And by accident, they like put the wrong total on an invoice. Like instead of like whatever $100, it was like $100,000 or something stupid, ridiculous. And the government just paid it, and then they just kept doing it. And they're like, oh my God, like we can just make up a number and the government will pay it. And they just kept doing it. And they had this little business that was sending things for the military overseas, and they were a subcontractor. And then the story continues, and they were living like this luxurious lifestyle, like all based on like these overinflamed prices on these invoices. And then eventually, like the FBI catches it, and they're like, hey, I think there's something going on here, and they investigate it. But they only got caught because they were greedy. Because what happened was that, like, one time they're like, hey, I think you messed up on this invoice. It looks kind of high or whatever. And then they're like, oh, sorry. They corrected it. And instead of like just saying, hey, we made a lot of money, let's just stop here. They by then the taste of money was just too great, and they couldn't let it go. And they were living these expensive lifestyles. So then they went back to it, and eventually the FBI investigates them. But my point of that is like, that's how reckless they are with our money. Like that they were just paying ridiculous amounts. And everybody knows that story of Rumsfeld the day before 9/11 when he talks about, I forget how many trillions of dollars went missing. And we're like,
3.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, what? Like, how much money went missing? Like, how do you not know where that money is? And some people would say, and our people in our community that whatever hit the Pentagon, was covering up some of that money and where that money went, and then maybe even some of the buildings that came down on September 11th.
World Trade Center 7.
Yep.
With the IRS, the SEC,
Mm-hmm.
CIA. There was tons of alphabet agencies, their records, all that stuff.
Yeah. So
a lot of the some of the scandals and things that were in the .coms and all that was in the Trade Center 7.
Yeah, without a doubt. And that's why people are looking to Bitcoin or gold or other things as a way of like trying to get ahead, because the truth is like, and even though like Bitcoin's not really a great, well, it can be a great investment if you time it correctly, I guess. But people are just looking for other options, things that aren't being manipulated or controlled by the elite. And I think that's why these options are at least things worth people, their time and attention to kind of look into.
Well, true. And nothing is, without manipulation on some level. I mean, almost everything has it. I mean, gold and silver certainly have been manipulated by the elite power structure, and J.P. Morgan was convicted of suppressing the silver price, which is, a lot of people wouldn't understand. Why would you make the price go down of something that you're the largest holder of? They're the largest private holder of silver in the world, and J.P. Morgan Chase. Well, and you find out, the military-industrial complex, 500 ounces. That's what's called a monster box. If you had a 500 1-ounce American Silver Eagles, that's a monster box. There's a monster box of American Silver Eagles in every Tomahawk missile. I mean, they don't pack them full of, Silver Eagles. That's just how much silver is used in the guidance systems and other things in the electronics. So you got to think about the military-industrial complex. The ruling class, they have a vested interest in keeping the price of silver down. You can, make that case. I certainly have no problem making that case. It seems there's something wrong with it. There's something wrong. I was reading a book yesterday. It was from the late 90s on early gold production, like from, 4000 BC and onward. And used to, from the first sets of the gold silver ratio, it was like 2-to-1. So like it took 2 ounces of silver to make an ounce of gold, like beginning of history. And then it was 10-to-1 and then 20. And that's pretty much the high end. It was 16-to-1 in this country for until 1933 or so. But that was, 16 ounces of silver make 1 ounce of gold. Well, now it's like 80. And sometimes it's been up to 100. During the first part of the scamdemic, it was 125 ounces of silver to make 1 ounce of gold. So certainly there's a lot of manipulation going on, and where it all ends up, it's kind of an unknown. A Bitcoin is a lot less manipulatable just because there's only 21 million Bitcoin that will ever exist. And that's, we just know that. You can see it in an open ledger. Millions of them are lost forever. You're never going to get them back. So I think somebody was showing me the other day, it was like all total, there's only 16 million that will ever really be available. And that's in theory. So there's an argument to be made about the scarcity of Bitcoin too. But I think what's happening is you're starting to see like the cracks in the whole system. The stock market can't keep up with inflation. Not really, because they just, you can always make another stock. You can always inflate the stock. The go woke, go broke, all that stuff that we talk about with the decisions they make with things called environmental social governance with ESG. The banksters always support socialism and communism. They always fund it. This is the largest so-called capitalists in the world. They fund their own opposition. So it's interesting to watch. I don't know where it's all going to end up. We definitely, the more that you can control third-party counterparty risk, the less you'll have to worry about manipulation. And that's counterparty risk is be somebody else holding your value for you.
Have you ever been like concerned about Bitcoin and like, hey, could it be a plot to get us all on digital currency? I know I'm sure you're familiar with Richard Grove. He's a friend of mine. We got close when he moved down to Hartford in Connecticut, not too far from where I live, and he's always like, hey, I'm skeptical of it. I'm skeptical of not knowing who created it. The origin story is kind of just a lot of just unknowns. And then also I was curious if you had any theories on the origin on our intriguement with gold, because that's kind of fascinating too. Some people would say like, okay, why are we so obsessed or in love with this shiny metal? There's a lot of different other shiny metals. What is it about this when you look at historically, the elites have always had it, made things out of it and whatnot. If you had any interesting theories on that.
Well, to talk about Bitcoin, for sure, It's an unknown. I've had my questions. Bitcoin's been very good to me in the sense that I got into it in a time when it really made some of my other businesses possible. So like on a level of just being grateful for the thing existing, you have to look at it broad spectrum. Has it helped more people? Has it hurt anybody? I don't know. Who is it hurting? At this point, is it just, it's definitely expanding the consciousness of people because those who get into Bitcoin are making a lot of the same arguments I'm making now. So as far as just having a different mindset, a paradigm shift, I think it's been very positive. Whether or not Satoshi Nakamoto or whoever it was, is a group of people, or is it some kind of bait and switch, like some people have said, like to get us used to digital currency and then switch it with the CBDC? That would be really hard to do. I mean, I don't know anybody in the crypto space that wants a CBDC, that even like remotely, like it's just hated. Like whenever it's talked about, like, oh, here we go again with the central bank. So like I don't think that it would have the desirous effect, if that's what it was, is to get us, all used to doing something digital. But it's always an open question. It's another thing that I ask too. I mean, I study history, and I talk about these really dark issues a lot, because we're talking about the mind of people or whatever they are that control the world of men. That what are they? What do they want? You have to put yourself in the mindset of a sociopath, which is really hard to do if you have a soul and you care about people, and you don't think like we don't think like the those at the top of the pyramid do. So it's kind of an unknown. But I do think that we do get a win every now and then. It could be that Bitcoin's one of our wins. Could be one of our people that just was a genius and said, I'll give you this gift and I'll walk away. That the only way you could really make it is how they did it. I mean, every other crypto on earth links back to a person, a company, a charter, somebody somewhere, right? Bitcoin's the only one that is just completely anonymous, in the sense that the network is supported by people all around the world that don't have anything to do with each other. So it is a decentralized network. There are some problems with it, yes, and I know all that, but I leave it in the column of, it could be just one of the wins for the good guys. We don't always have to lose. We don't always have to be manipulated, and not everything is a psyop to make us, to run us into the ground. So that's an open question. And if you came up to me tomorrow and showed me all the evidence and that Bitcoin was a plot to whatever, then I would change the way how I think about it, given enough evidence. And would it be soul shattering? And no, I mean, I just go on about my business. Um, but again, we'll find out. Eventually, we'll find out. And I think 10 years from now, I think Bitcoin will be going strong. Well, hopefully there's like a future, because we're on some crazy times. I don't know. I'm not trying to be alarmist, but I pay attention, and man, it is ugly times ugly out there and getting weirder. As far as your question on gold, I saw a clip this morning. It's funny you asked that. I saw a clip this morning floating around, and it had, Joe Rogan talking to another one. I think it was a ufologist, one of the UFO researchers, and I think they're talking about Nibiru, or one of the, like the planet X or whatever, and the Anunnaki, which you go to, like Zacharias Sitchin, talked about this, where the whole reason these visitors came and they set up shop and use human beings to mine for them, because gold is more ubiquitous here by many, many factors than it could be on these other, another planet or something. And that's an open question. It is really interesting that we're kind of drawn to it. One of my favorite movies is The Edge with Anthony Hopkins, and he's with Alec Baldwin. There's where they're trapped, or they're stranded in the Pacific Northwest, and the bears chasing them, and Anthony Hopkins pulls apart. I think he had like some gold on his belt and his buckle or something. He pulls it and makes a hook out of it. And he said, "This is gold, and the whole world longs for it." I watched that in the theaters when I was a kid, and I was thinking, that's interesting. Why do we like gold? I just remember thinking that. And as you start to, we get out of the 90s and into the 21st century, and reality starts to set in, and you see how much was fake and all the stuff that I learned, you just go, oh man, gold is money. When I've got a gold coin in my hand, and I'm not in love with it in the sense that I just, some people, I guess, get gold fever or whatever. I just think, I think it's neat. I like the history. I'm interested in it, But if I hold a gold coin in my hand, I know I've got value and I know it's liquid. Like I know I can, if I've got this, if I've got that gold coin and I need something, I can, in 10,000 different ways, I can spend that, right? Whereas if I've got cash and there's something wrong with my currency, and I'll give you an example. When I was 23, tail end of the invasion of Iraq, I get there, the city of Mosul had just fallen. So they give my team, they give us orders, go to the bank. Well, we didn't know what the hell was going on. Nobody knew anything. We didn't have maps. We didn't have anything. So we go to this bank and there's people, they're yelling at the tellers at the bank. People are taking boxes from behind the counter full of Iraqi dinar. And then they would go out in the streets and they would take them. And then there was just nobody that wanted them. So like people were withdrawing their Iraqi dinar and there was no value in the currency. I got to watch a paper currency die in real time. I didn't even really understand what I was watching at 23. I didn't understand it like I do now. I mean, it was surreal. I'm like, so their money just died. And then everybody the next day was trading in dollars, which is funny because 20 years later, the Iraqi parliament made it illegal to deal in dollars. That's how far away we are, from the American empire apex, post 9/11 to where we are now, not even close. So gold, though, has supplanted all of that. Like these countries will trade in gold. You have a global gold spot price. Humanity in and of itself, like it's those who talk, there's some Bitcoin people that think gold will be irrelevant and that will never happen. I'm sorry. Like gold will always have value. Gold, it's just something about it. If you read the Bible, it's everywhere in there. It doesn't mean that you worship it, but it talks about gold, silver. It talks that nobody dives to the bottom of the ocean to get paper currency. Like, they're in shipwrecks. Nobody cares that there's a bag of cash down there. It's the gold, folks. Like that's what it is. And it's got a rich history. It's part of our story. Some of it might be inexplicable. Like, why do we look for it? Why is it, AU on the periodic table? It basically translates to aurora, which is shining, shining dawn, all those things. It's gold, and you can think the connotation of like almost like the sun and godlike, so things like that. I mean, just attributed. There was some of the gurus would call it tears of God. Like the gold is tears, like the Aztecs called it that. And their philosophy was that and there's a lot of mystical type people that believe like the more gold that you have, the more that you actually attract, right? So like you carry gold with you, you have gold. So you have some gold, it like brings other gold. That's maybe ethereal and metaphysical and who knows. But there is something about it. It has an energy to it. It's a weird metal, by the way. I mean, it's very pliable. It's dense. If you never just, if you go next time you're with a gold dealer, say, hey, can you let me hold a 1 ounce gold coin? See if they'll let you hold a 1 ounce gold Krugerrand. It just feels different. And you'll know, you can tell in my business, you can tell a base metal, which is something like lead or, nickel and all this. You can tell and use the energy of it. As a matter of fact, if you take a rare earth magnet and you run it across gold or silver bullion, it doesn't stick to the magnet, but it kind of pushes it a little bit. It has a resonance. It's kind of like a little energy feel. It's interesting.
Yeah, Portuguese people, we typically do. If you even look at our jewelry, it's a lot of little loops because typically they use very high grade gold. It's not, sometimes you see, not to make fun of Italians, but you see Italians with like big crosses and big jewelry. Like you can't do that if it's more gold and less other metals, right? You need to mix other metals in there. If you get 24 karat gold, like it's soft. So you have to, so if you look at like Portuguese necklaces or bracelets, it's a lot of little loops because it strengthens it. And where Italian jewelry, they'll wear like the big loops and the bigger jewelry, but it can't be 24 karat. It has to be with other metals mixed in there. It's fascinating because it's like, I don't know why I find it like nice to look at. It's weird because the mysteries of it is so fascinating because it really, like you said, historically, in Bibles and scriptures and, in other parts of the world, other ancient civilizations, there always seems to be this gold element to it. And people seem to want it, or like all come to the conclusion that we're considering this special, right, to some extent. And there's not really a really good origin story on why that is. I think, like we were talking about a little bit about ancient civilizations in the Joe Rogan episode, that might have been the one with Billy Carson. I think that these conversations are interesting because maybe gold is a part of our origin story. Maybe that we're going to find out there is a actual explanation on why we're attracted to it. And I feel like a lot of these things are starting to come undone in regards to like opening the door to other possibilities of the human origin story. I think we're like connecting some dots and we're putting together some pieces, but it's fascinating because I think gold is a part of that story. I've been really just intrigued with the ancient civilization stuff, and I feel like there's something about our universe we don't quite understand, or there's some like lost wisdom that we're kind of rediscovering. I just think that there's going to be some like awakening to like the way the universe really works. And I love the fact that Joe Rogan's having people on like Terrence Howard and like you said, like Bitcoin, similar thing. I have the same type of perspective on Terrence Howard and others as I do with Bitcoin. Like it's opening people's minds to other possibilities. It doesn't necessarily mean you subscribe to everything, but it's opening people's minds to like, hey, you know what? Like our worldview has been molded to believe that this is the way the world is. And maybe that's wrong. Maybe we need to look outside the box. Maybe we need to rethink everything. The thing about experts too is that like when you go into any expertise, you have like the founding fathers of those expertise, and then you can only build, and you come from a family of builders, so you'll kind of get this metaphor, like you can only build off the foundation that they created. And I think what we need to do is say, screw that foundation, because it's limiting our ability to really expand, and it's having some restriction on our imagination and creativity. Like, let's blow up that foundation and start from scratch, because every expertise kind of start like it's like, oh, you go to a university, it's like, oh, these are the founding fathers of this theory and this and the way we look at the world, and the banking system, economics, whatever it may be. And it's like, but there's always a foundation that restricts you, and you can only be creative building upwards off that foundation, right? So there's always going to be some restrictions. It's like, no, let's blow it all up and start fresh, right? And people don't like that. That's why Graham Hancock got a lot of pushback, and others, anybody who kind of says like, hey, you know what, like you're told that the sky is this color, but it's actually this color, or maybe there is no sky, or whatever it may be, but I love people who do that, just people who open up our minds to new possibilities. And I think we need more of that, because I think like many of us, like we just get stuck in a routine of like doing the same thing every day. And then, what happens is your thinking also does a similar type of routine, where it's just like, you just get in these patterns, and then it's hard to kind of get out of it. Do you listen to music when you work out in regards to like headphones, or do you, because I find myself like, sometimes I enjoy having headphones, and then sometimes I like to just like between sets at the gym to just sit there like with my thoughts and like just ponder. I feel like it's a great time to just like sit there and like kind of just think about things and brainstorm. Like, okay, well, I got 30 seconds or a couple minutes between sets to think and not really distracted, because I don't bring my phone into the gym, because if not, then I'll just keep staring at it and like, oh, I got this email, let me write this. Next thing you know, you've been at the gym forever and you got nothing done. But I think people need that. People need to like wonder and wander. I don't know what long rant that was for, but I'm sure there should have been a question at the end of it.
Well, to answer your question on headphones, yes, I do use headphones. My son got me some, and that's the first time I started using the ones that are wireless. I'm old school, like even like you get the fanny pack with the CD player in it from the 90s. I don't do that anymore, but I don't have to carry my phone on me while I train anymore, just because I got those Bluetooth. So it really does help out. And what I'll do is I'll train a little bit. I'll put it on the phone on do not disturb, so it won't ring through. I won't hear it ding or anything. I'm gonna set it somewhere, and I'll take them off too. And then I have this app that I use also. It kind of give me a short burst of, could be somebody talking about, uh, a motivational thing or something inspirational, something that's you go from music to that, and maybe a short burst of that at the end of my training or whatever. But I try to go to the gym, even when I'm just going to just do machines and stretching, just to get in that environment of just improving, right? Because we just live in a world where everything is about, it's just taking a piece of you. Everything that, is taking you down a peg, taking away your energy, just eating at your soul. Like, we have to pay attention to the headlines, for the shows that we do. And it can be draining, to say the least. So I like to go and I own a gym here in Hollister, Missouri, just south of my shop in Branson. And it's great. It's 24 hours. And, it's not a really big place, but, we got a great, group of customers, and we just, like I said, we had that competition, there this past Saturday, and had
Gyms
some
are like
fun.
churches.
But,
I feel like gyms are like churches. It's a community. I see the same people. Like when I go to the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning, like I know who's going to be there. If I go a little later, like if I can sleep in a little bit, I go in at 7 or 8. And before I go to the office, it's like I know who's going to be there around 7 or 8. And it's like, it's nice. I see these people. We make small talk. And you become friends with the regulars, right? And you look forward to seeing them. And there's a energy in the gym, right? Like a positive energy. Like we're all there for the same purpose, right? We're either physically or even more important, mentally trying to just have a better day and have a better life. And there's so much that comes into or benefits to physical activity. Like I remember talking to my kids, and at a really young age, one day, and what sparked it was that they're like, I love when we have games first thing in the morning. And I'm like, yeah, but it kind of sucks. I'm like, we're all rushing around trying to get to your game on time and whatnot. And I'm like, we got to wake up early on a day that typically, you don't have to wake up early for school or anything like that. And they're like, yeah, but I just feel better afterwards. And I'm like, oh my God, like they get it. Like they got, like, they were like set, this was probably a year ago. My daughter was probably 6. My son was probably 8 roughly. And it was like, I was like stunned that they understood that they felt better. The rest of the day was better when they went and ran and got their heart rate up and got a sweat. And I was just like, that's exactly why we still do it at our age, right? It's that mental aspect.
it really sets the tone. That's why the military, you get the revelry is at 6:30. It's when that formation. It's when you're going to stand in formation and start your runs and your PT, right?
And I've heard you talk about discipline. Like that's what's so important about working out is it motivates you to, well, you see the benefit of discipline. What is it, Jocko, who says discipline is freedom, right? And it's
Sure.
like, remember the first time I heard that, I'm like, what does that mean? And I'm like, oh, I get it. I'm like, I'm not a victim to desire. I'm not a victim to, it doesn't have to control me. It's like, I remember when I first started doing the keto diet years ago, I loved the fact that I had the discipline not to eat. I would go, I still, till this day, I still only eat once a day. I eat at night with the family, pour a little glass of wine. But during the day, I'm like, I'm not, I don't have to eat. Hunger doesn't tell me what I'm going to do in my day. I decide what I'm going to do in my day, right? I don't have to, revolve my plans around eating and hunger. And, but all these things that come with working out, like, going to the gym when you don't feel like going, right? And, pushing yourself when you maybe are a little tired. And, all these discipline things like that ends up being beneficial in all aspects of life. And I remember, like, my wife has family in Florida, and we go down there. And, like, when we first started going to Florida on a regular basis, my wife's like, do you really need to go to the gym when we're on vacation? I'm like, yeah, because I'm just a better person. I'm like, I can enjoy, even vacations, like, I can enjoy it better when I go to the gym and I feel like I earned that dinner and I earned that glass of wine and I earned, I did something. I accomplished something today to have, to kind of feel like, okay, I can put my mind at ease. Like I've earned this. I'm not just being a glutton, right? I earned it. And so it's funny because she's not a gym rat and at all. But I keep trying to tell her, I'm like, something like whatever it is, yoga, dance, walks, like it's gonna make you a better person. And I think too many people, speaking of like all the issues of the world, like too many people are like stressed about money, right? They're overworked. They're not eating healthy, right? We've been lied to about what we eat, talking about another rigged game. Like, you get people who grew up in our generations where they were told the food pyramid is like how you should be eating. And now they all have arthritis and cancer and, they're diabetic and all these health issues and they were just listening to what they told us, right? The way we should be eating. And so many people need to like just unplug from mainstream media, mainstream experts and information, and really research for themselves and find out that like probably the way our ancestors lived and the way they had communities, like that's probably a way better way of living.
Oh, I completely agree. And you can look at so many things are affected by the origin of my wheelhouse, which is fiat currency. But there's fiat food. I mean, there's people are talking about how we the mass produce things that are just completely fake, and yeah, just getting back to what's real, getting back to having meaning. We were sold really a pack of lies over our coming up over the last. I mean, I'm 44, and so much of my world view, even though I was contrarian and raised by entrepreneurs and looked at the world differently, but not enough. It wasn't. It was truly, and I learned something every day to break up my paradigm and to to cause me to want to try to gain more value from existing. Like just spend, like you talked about, the gym is kind of church. It is kind of that way. Like we just finding meaning and community and getting out of our staring at our little our little monoliths from 2001, having that connection with people again. And I think that'll be an opportunity for that in the future too. So we're kind of reaching what's the second law of thermodynamics is entropy. See that modern culture doesn't offer you very much. I mean, yeah, we have the internet, which is pretty cool, and you can sell things online, and you can do a lot of things. A lot of the old paradigm for how to go to school and go into debt and get a job, that's falling apart. I think, but whenever there's a change, there's always opportunity. It's like the Chinese symbol for crisis and opportunity are just inverted. It's the same thing. We have opportunities to do some amazing things here in the coming years. And that's just, I really think, going somewhat back to our roots, and then also looking at the future, building a better future that, that the elites certainly want to create, like this pod future where you eat bugs for Greta and, you own nothing and you'll be happy. They don't paint a very great, they're terrible at selling anything. They don't sell it. They're not good. They're not even good at tempting you. They just tell you it's going to be great. You eat the bugs, all that stuff. It's not, and so I think it's our responsibility, especially in alternative media, to not only just to seek the truth, but to give people an alternative, not only to the information they seek, but maybe we create a different philosophy, a different way of looking at things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, for people listening, I know I've taken up a lot of your time, and I'm sure you want to spend some more time with your son and as he works for you, but let me let people know where they can keep up with all your work, where they can get your show, if they want to look into your business, your gold and silver business. How can they look more into that and get more information and anything else?
Well, again, thanks for having me. I've enjoyed our talk, and always good to see you. We haven't done a show together since Union of the Unwanted some time ago. It's been a couple years, so you'll have to come on my show sometime. I've got several shows. It usually comes onto one podcast channel, but I have a radio show called the Arterburn Radio Transmission, which is ART. That was a show I restarted in 2018, and it's a little bit of terrestrial radio, but I do an hour a week. And then I have a podcast called Paratruther, because I was a paratrooper, and we talk about everything, hidden history and mystery, and I even do just life. We just psychology, just interpersonal stuff. There's Paratruthers fun, and I got a couple of great guys I do that with, and then I have the Wise Wolf Golden Crypto Show. I'm starting to put up new episodes very soon. I've been busy, but I will get some stuff going there. But if you want to check out what I do, and that's just precious metals, and of course helping people. If you've got a IRA or a 401k and you want to roll something, you want to get physical precious metals, you can do that. You can do that through me. You can go to wisewolf.gold or wolfpack.gold, either one. We have a membership program that's as little as $50 a month to get precious metals. So you don't have to have thousands of dollars to buy precious metals. You can go through me, and we have a collective buying program. We have close to 1,200 people all over the country that buy from me every month automatically. So I have about 700 5-star reviews. So having some fun. And in this new economic world order that I'm going to be able to help a lot more people than I thought I was going to be able to help a few years ago. We've been doing a lot more shows like yours and just talking to more people. So yeah, come check me out. We have a deal on there. If it's wolfpack.gold and /consultation, it's a free you can talk to me for free. So if you just go through the proper channels, I'll make time. That's open to everybody. If you want to ask me a couple questions about, and I don't give financial advice, but I will tell you like what I would do, so if that's any help at all, and what I can do. So thank you again for having me.
You also have a program for kids, which I love, right?
Yes, I do. So Wolfpack has several different levels. The lowest for just adults is called Lone Wolf. That's $50 a month. It goes all the way up to something called Zen Wolf. It's I came up with these little these tiers. I thought was fun. So everybody has their own logo. But we did one for kids. It's just called Wolf Cub. It's $35 a month, and we put a newsletter in there. I wish I had it on my desk. We had a great newsletter. But we just give a history of a coin. We have crossword puzzles and talk about fiat currency and what is money, and but I'll put prizes in there. Like I don't really make money off of it, but we just put in stuff that these will be future customers and people that we're actually adding something to their childhood. Like this is of value because I got the idea of kids coming in the shop here and asking me about silver coins and stuff. And I'm like, well, this is different, like teach me about this and what is about, and kids that have their collections and stuff. So it's been a lot of fun. So yeah, Wolf Cup, $35 a month, and you can get, there's just a variety of coins. It's not, and if you save it over time, it's actually a pretty good savings account, for your little one. So yeah, Wolf Cup, check that out. And you can do one-time purchases, by the way. You don't have to just do a monthly recurring.
Well, you said it. It's you probably don't make a lot of money off it, mostly because it's impossible to get gold now, right? Isn't it? Like I know that's something that I keep hearing, that it's getting harder and harder.
It's hard.
Yeah,
it's hard. That's why I've got two. That's why I set up a second location in North Texas, and then that's why I float back and forth. I'm on the road a lot, just picking up supply, because it's going to get weirder too. Like when the bulk of people start running, trying to put their money into something or put their cash into something and start ordering, it's going to go, it's going to be bananas.
Oh, I believe it. And so, yeah, without a doubt, check out all the links in the show description. Thank you so much, Tony, for the amazing conversation. It's always fun listening to you. And I'm so glad that we got to reconnect, because this is the first time we've had a one-on-one conversation. And support this guy. I changed my merch store recently to Ryan Graham from Big Frog Merch, small business. And he's another great guy. And I love the fact that we can help these small businesses.
Right. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll have to check out Big Frog Merch too. I got some merch needs that you may want to not be a good fit.
Yeah, Ryan's awesome. He actually has a podcast called The Independent Review. So he just takes clips from podcasts that he listens to and he enjoys. And then he basically, like all the best clips of the week, he'll make his own episode out of, and just kind of be like, hey, here's a great clip from this show. And so he uses his podcast to basically help promote other people's podcasts. So it's similar to like, he was inspired by Richard Grove's Grand Theft World, but he, instead of having a 48-hour podcast like Richard Grove, he has like a, an hour or two podcast, and he'll just have little clips. So if you're looking to like learn about new podcasts, or maybe you don't have time to listen to all these shows, and then he has his merch stores, Big Frog, and I know Steve from AM Wake Up uses him, and I heard a bunch of great things. And when I had Ryan on my show, I'm like, he's a great guy. Why not go through him? Thanks, Tony. Hey, enjoy the rest of your day. We'll keep in touch.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Thank you too.
I believe